After the resounding victory at the Shang fortress, the Zhou army returned to camp in high spirits. Exhausted yet proud warriors carried the Zhou banners high above the rolling green hills. But amidst the celebration, Zhou Gong Dan remained somber. He knew that the most decisive battle was still ahead. King Zhou of Shang, though defeated, was like a cornered beast. His real strength no longer lay in his army, but in the fear he had sown among his people for decades. It was this fear that Zhou Gong Dan needed to dismantle to usher in a new era. Inside the command tent, the flickering lamplight illuminated the faces of Zhou's top commanders. Jiang Zia sat quietly, his sharp eyes fixed on the detailed map of Zhaoge, the last stronghold of the Shang dynasty. Zhao, recently rescued from the hands of King Zhou, was present despite his unhealed wounds. His eyes filled with determination. Zhou Gong Dan entered the tent, and everyone rose to greet him. He swept his gaze across the room, then pointed at the map, where Zhaoge was marked with a red circle. King Zhou has retreated to his most fortified stronghold, but it is also his weakest point. He has lost the trust of his generals and the faith of his people. We must not only defeat him, but also destroy the facade of power he has built over the decades. Jiang Zia broke the silence, his calm voice laced with analytical precision. The walls of Zhaoge are high, and its troops are numerous. A direct assault would cost us greatly. What is your plan, Duke Zhou? Zhou Gong Dan pondered for a moment, then pointed to the Hao River, which flowed near the city. This river is their Achilles heel. It serves as Zhaoge's main water source. If we redirect its flow, we can flood the city, weakening its defenses and causing chaos. But to succeed, we must first convince the people of Zhaoge that we are not here to destroy them, but to free them. Zhao, still furious over his treatment by King Zhou, asked, "But how can we make the people trust us? They have lived in fear for too long." Zhou Gong Dan smiled faintly. "We will send them a message that exposes the cruelty of King Zhou and promises them a brighter future under the Zhou dynasty. We will plant seeds of hope in their hearts, and when the time comes, they will help us bring him down." Meanwhile, in Zhaoge, King Zhou sat on his golden throne, gripping his sword tightly. His bloodshot eyes burned with frustration and madness. The palace, still dazzling with gold and jewels, now felt cold and empty. Rumors of Zhou's victory had spread far and wide, and even his most loyal ministers had begun to waver. "That wretched Zhou Gong Dan," King Zhou roared, slamming his fist onto the table. "He thinks he can overthrow me? I am the son of heaven, chosen by the gods themselves." Xian Luo, his cunning advisor, stepped forward with a sly expression. "Your Majesty, your army is still strong. If you permit, I will lead an elite force to ambush the Zhou camp and cut the head off the snake." King Zhou shook his head, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "No, let them come. I want them to step into the city and realize that nothing can bring me down. I will turn Zhaoge into their graveyard." Zhou Gong Dan penned a letter addressed to the people of Zhaoge. The letter detailed King Zhou's atrocities, his brutal tortures and executions, his relentless taxation, and his indulgent feasts while the people starved. It also carried a promise. Under the Zhou dynasty, there would be justice, fairness, and peace. The letter was smuggled into the city by Zhou spies and sympathetic merchants. Before long, whispers of discontent began to spread. Weary of King Zhou's tyranny, the people started to dream of a new life, and many secretly sent messages back to Zhou Gong Dan offering their support. The Zhou army did not launch a direct assault on Zhaoge. Instead, they began digging a massive canal to divert the Hao River, turning its waters into a weapon of destruction. Thousands of soldiers worked tirelessly, guided by Jiang Zia's meticulous planning. Inside Zhaoge, though the Zhou army was still out of sight, the tension was palpable. The city's once mighty walls began to tremble as water seeped in, creating cracks and panic. One evening, Zhou Gong Dan stood atop a hill overlooking Zhaoge. The light from the city's torches reflected on the rising waters of the Hao River. He knew the decisive moment was near. As the Hao River flooded Zhaoge, the Zhou army launched a three-pronged attack. The weakened city gates, softened by the rising waters, crumbled under the assault. The terrified citizens, already disillusioned with King Zhou, offered little resistance. Many Shang soldiers abandoned their posts to protect their families, while others surrendered willingly. Within the palace, King Zhou, now isolated and desperate, barricaded himself in the grand hall surrounded by the treasures he had hoarded throughout his reign. In a final act of madness, he set everything ablaze, from his golden throne to his vast hoards of jewels and himself. The flames roared high into the sky, a fitting end to the tyrant's reign of terror. As the fires of the Shang palace burned out, Zhaoge fell silent. Zhou Gong Dan stood on the steps of the city, his gaze fixed on the distant hills. There was no triumphant cheer from him, only deep contemplation. He knew that this victory was not the end but the beginning of a new journey. "We have won," he said, his voice steady yet resonant, addressing the gathered soldiers and generals. "But remember, this victory is not for power or wealth. It is a promise to those who sacrificed everything, a promise that we will build a better world." Under the leadership of Zhou Gong Dan and King Wu of Zhou, the Zhou dynasty entered a golden age. The fall of the Shang dynasty marked not just the end of tyranny, but also the dawn of a new era where justice and peace reigned supreme.